Because it's already decided. This was my husband Connor's catchphrase. Our in-laws' house doubles as a home office for a construction business, with Connor and my father-in-law Mason often out on cable installation jobs during the day, leaving the house empty. My name is Emma. I used to work as an accounting clerk at a certain company, but recently, my mother-in-law Olivia started making mistakes with invoice numbers and payment recipients due to her farsightedness. So, I quit my job to live and handle the accounting at the in-laws' house. The arrangement was supposed to be that Olivia would take over the household chores in exchange, but in reality, she started spending her newfound free time on hobbies and stopped doing any housework at all. I have a daughter, Sophia, who's in elementary school, so avoiding chores like cleaning and cooking wasn't an option for me. Reluctantly, I ended up taking on all the household duties since I was home the most. Thanks to you, Emma, I can take it easy. I really appreciate it. Olivia would say this with a light thanks, but whenever I asked her to take out the trash or if she had gathered the newspapers to throw away, she'd complain of a bad back and wouldn't lift a finger. I kept thinking, your only issue is supposed to be your eyesight, as I ended up doing everything myself. Maybe my attitude let the entire in-laws think they could get away with anything. Connor and Olivia started to ask me for various favors after the fact. Oh, Emma. From next week for 2 weeks, we're taking care of the grandkids, so I'm counting on you. This was suddenly announced at the dinner table, and I was taken aback. Olivia, which grandkids? When I asked for clarification, Olivia calmly replied, Amelia's kids. You know, school's out for summer next week. Her kids love the pool, and they've been nagging about going every day. We have a pool nearby, so Emma, you take them, okay? What? I must have looked puzzled. Olivia lectured me with a stern look. Amelia, she always hated swimming. It would be cruel to make her accompany her kids to a pool she dislikes every day. It's fine if you goes with them. Amelia has been having a tough time since she got married. We want to make things a bit easier for her when she comes back home. I was irked at being inconvenienced, but thought that if my sister-in-law Amelia was coming, maybe having her clean or cook occasionally would lighten my load a bit. So, I reluctantly agreed, forgetting about her personality. Once back at the in-laws' house, Amelia began to treat me almost like a housekeeper. On the first day of summer break, she arrived and said, Here, a souvenir, and handed me a bag full of contents. Amelia, what's this? As I opened the bag and saw it was filled with clothes, I asked. Amelia looked at me and said, Clothes for laundry. I thought I'd have them washed at my parents' home. With 2 kids, laundry piles up. Make sure to wash them soon so we don't run out of clothes to wear, she said rapidly and then left for Olivia and Mason's place. What is this? I'm not a housekeeper. I was about to protest, but lost the will when I saw Amelia chatting happily with Mason. I figured any complaints would just be defended by Olivia. I thought, it's just for 2 weeks, I can endure it, but never imagined Connor would betray me too. As I scrambled with the breakfast preparations for the suddenly increased number of people, the doorbell rang early in the morning. Wondering who could it be this early, I went to the door and found my brother-in-law Matthew and his wife Charlotte, with their son Liam in tow. Without a greeting, Charlotte pushed Liam forward and said, So, we'll be leaving him with you for 2 weeks. We're off to the sea for diving, so we might be hard to reach by phone. Just text us if you need anything. Leaving Liam behind, Matthew and Charlotte made to leave, but I hurriedly stopped them. What do you mean, leaving him with me? I haven't been informed about this. Charlotte looked irritated, but Matthew tilted his head slightly and enlightened me. Huh? Didn't Connor tell you? Amelia's dropping off her kids, and he suggested your place too. I was worried it'd be too much trouble, but Connor said having 2 or 3 makes no difference. I blurted out in frustration. There's no way that's okay. It's troubling to have you show up unannounced like this. Then, from behind, a voice said, "Ah, they're here. Good. Leave Liam here. In return, bring back some liquor as a souvenir." Connor didn't look at me, only speaking to Matthew and Charlotte. Matthew and Charlotte, ignoring me just the same, started speaking. "We appreciate it. You can count on Connor. Thanks in advance," Charlotte said in a sweet voice, then Matthew. "Connor does love his liquor. Thanks, we'll leave it to you." Laughed, waved his hand, and quickly got into the car and drove off. Connor, fond of liquor, seemed to have agreed to take Liam in exchange for some. Shocked by the situation, I forgot Liam was there and couldn't help but confront Connor. "Hey, what's this about? Why did you tell Matthew we could take him without asking?" But Connor seemed genuinely clueless about why I was angry. "Why are you so mad? It doesn't make a difference whether it's 3 kids or 4. Sophia will be happy to have plenty of playmates during summer break." He was saying this as if 3 active boys and the quiet Sophia could play together as equals. There was much I wanted to say, but seeing Liam standing there, looking forlornly in the direction Matthew and Charlotte had gone, I couldn't bring myself to complain any further. Connor, wanting to avoid further discussion, "It's already decided," said curtly and went inside the house. Reluctantly, I took Liam by the hand and welcomed him into the in-laws' house. The 2 weeks taking care of 3 nephews were hellish. From morning to night, I was in the kitchen, trying to satisfy the appetites of growing boys. I tried several times to get Amelia to take over, but she refused to budge from in front of the TV. If I persisted, I ended up being scolded by Olivia. Amelia is always exhausted from taking care of her 2 boys. Let her be treated as a guest while she's here. Mason and Connor nodded along with Olivia's words, leaving me without allies. But Amelia's kids were brothers, so they managed to entertain themselves, which was somewhat of a relief. The real trouble was Matthew's son, Liam. Liam, envious of Amelia's kids for having their mom around, didn't dare act up because they were older and would retaliate. Presumably with that in mind, Liam started taking out his frustration on Sophia in secret. Moreover, he was secretly being mean to Sophia, so I was completely unaware of it. I was too busy with the accounting work for our business, meals, laundry, and supervising trips to the pool to notice, but that's no excuse. Sophia confided in me about Liam's bullying the following year, after Olivia and Connor announced at dinner that they would be taking in the nephews again. "Amelia says she's counting on us for this summer again. She wants her kids taken to the pool like last year. Also, she wants to go on a trip with just the ladies during the summer break. So I'll be traveling with her. Mason, we'll be away for a couple of days, okay?" Olivia discussed taking in the nephews without seeking my agreement, oddly turning the conversation to Mason. Mason, his face flushed from the evening's drinks. "Have a good trip," smiled and said. As I sat there, dreading a repeat of last year's pool and home routine. "Oh, I forgot to mention Matthew too. They want to go on a diving trip abroad this time, just the 2 of them," Connor added. I glared at Connor in irritation, but as usual, "It's already decided," he simply said. As I was resigning myself to another 2 weeks of endurance, I noticed something was off with Sophia sitting next to me. She had stopped eating, was looking down, pale and trembling. "What's wrong, Sophia? Are you feeling okay?" No, it's nothing. She clearly wasn't okay. But Sophia, like me, tends to bear with unpleasant things in front of others. Knowing this about Sophia, I went to her room after dinner to talk, and by the time we finished, my face was red with anger. Sophia, is that true? Liam did that to you at the pool? When I asked, Sophia, her eyes brimming with tears, nodded. Yes, Mom. When we go to the pool, Liam always clings to me, pinching my back and bottom. Even when I tell him it hurts and to stop, he doesn't. I must have been so distracted by Amelia's noisy kids that I neglected to keep a closer watch on Sophia. Sophia added, as I regretted not noticing at all. Even when we come back from the pool, he enters my room without permission and roughly plays with my dolls. He doesn't stop even when I ask him to. I remembered sewing back the arm of a teddy bear I found almost torn off while cleaning her room, thinking I'd have to remind Sophia to be careful. I never realized that was Liam's doing. Mom, I don't want to spend another summer vacation with Liam or Amelia's kids. They both try to make me write their diaries. I recalled Amelia expressing her relief when leaving our house. I'm so glad the boys finished their homework. Was happy. Sophia is mature and smart beyond her years, but even so, to have a younger child do their homework is unacceptable. I deeply regretted thinking it was enough just to endure it myself. Because I kept silent and resigned, Sophia ended up suffering even more. Looking into Sophia's reddened eyes, I made a promise. This summer vacation, I won't let Liam or Amelia's kids hurt you ever again. Trust me, okay? Hugging Sophia, I resolved to protect her this time for sure. Connor, with his habit of saying it's already decided, was unreliable. With that in mind, I made a call, hoping for help. And on the day before summer vacation, Sophia and I quietly packed and called a cab right after breakfast. Oh. A cab? How odd, did Amelia and the others arrive a day early? Olivia wondered aloud, to which I cheerfully responded. That was me who called it. This summer, Sophia and I decided to spend at my parents' home. So, that's that. As Sophia and I headed for the door, a flustered Connor chased after us. Emma, what are you doing? Who's going to look after the nephews when they arrive? You took them in last year. Why change your mind now? Frustrated, I retorted. You say took them in, but it was after the fact, wasn't it? I never agreed to it. To Connor's complaints, I had only one thing to say. We're spending it at my parents' home. It's already decided. With that, we quickly got into the cab and headed straight for my parents' home. My parents welcomed Sophia and me warmly. Sophia, glad you could come. I made pudding, want some? My mom offered, and my dad added. Sophia prefers chips over pudding, right? How about going to buy some with Grandpa? He tries to take her out with a sweet face. Olivia and Mason, who doted on the nephews, made Sophia feel cherished for the first time in a while. After she went to bed, I explained the whole situation to my parents. I had briefed them when I decided we'd return to my parents' home, but now I felt the need to share everything to ensure they'd be on our side if Olivia or Connor tried to take us back. The guilt of not noticing Sophia's suffering spilled over as I talked. Emma, don't be so hard on yourself. It's understandable you didn't notice with all the care you were providing to those boys every day. Mom comforted me, but Dad's reaction was different. Fond of Sophia, Dad was genuinely angry for the first time in a while. That's right. It's not your fault. Olivia and Connor, who dumped all the childcare on you, are to blame too. They should have noticed Sophia's unhappiness. Right? Connor, perhaps influenced by Olivia or simply insensitive, often told me he wished for a son over a daughter. I figured he wouldn't have done anything even if Sophia had complained about Liam's bullying. While talking with my parents, my mobile phone rang. Expecting it to be either Olivia or Connor, I answered the phone. Sure enough, it was Olivia, who angrily said, "Emma, what's this about leaving the household chores and running off to your parents' home as Connor's wife? Come back first thing tomorrow morning, understood?" Olivia's shrill voice seemed to be heard by my parents nearby, as they frowned. Suddenly, Dad grabbed my mobile phone and started talking to Olivia. "I can't stay silent on this. You say as Connor's wife, but doesn't Amelia have a husband too? Yet, when she visits her parents' home, you insist Emma treats her like a guest, allowing her to relax. But you're saying she doesn't have the same right?" Olivia, caught off guard by my dad's sharp retort, stuttered, "Well, that's not. I mean, then what do you mean?" You could almost see Olivia scrambling for words on the other end. As my mom and I exchanged looks and chuckled, it seemed Olivia handed the phone to Connor nearby. "I'm sorry, but the nephews are coming over tomorrow, and there's nobody to look after them during the day. Could you at least ask Emma to come back?" Connor's request left me feeling disappointed inside. So, they were planning to dump the babysitting on me after all. Connor and Olivia probably didn't want to admit to Amelia and Matthew that they couldn't take the nephews after all. Dad was unyielding in his response to Connor. "So, you made a promise and now you want to leave everything to Emma? Besides, aren't Olivia and Amelia at your house? What are they doing all day?" Connor mumbled something indistinct. Of course. He couldn't admit to spending the day watching TV or out at classes in this situation. Dad cheerfully offered a solution. "Well, if you're in trouble, I can't ignore it. They're relatives, after all, Amelia and Matthew's kids. I'll handle it," Dad said with a mischievous grin. Knowing Dad, Mom and I understood he was up to something, but Connor took his words at face value. Thinking Dad would convince me to return to the in-laws' house. "Thank you, please do," Connor repeated before hanging up. The rest of the story comes from what Dad told us about his 2 weeks at the in-laws' house. Dad showed up early in the morning at the in-laws' house, claiming to be my replacement, and got everyone up for morning exercises. Dad was a former middle school PE teacher, known for handling students with tough behavior, leading both physical education and disciplinary actions for years. With a stern face and a commanding voice, Dad had Mason and Connor following orders, trembling. Even when Amelia and Matthew arrived, Dad didn't flinch, lining the kids up in the yard for exercise. Charlotte tried to complain, but Dad loudly proclaimed, "What business do you have leaving children behind for an overseas trip?" His voice echoed so loudly that she quickly left, probably worried about the neighbors' opinions. After ordering Olivia to make breakfast, Dad took the children to the park for a 2-kilometer run. Coaxing reluctant kids, "If you don't do this, I won't take you to the pool," Dad said, and he reluctantly ran. "You have a growing child, so you should include more vegetables and protein." And making sure they ate everything without complaints. Connor and Mason didn't defend Olivia but quietly ate and seemed to rush off to work. While gathering the kids for homework, telling Amelia to clean and do laundry. "Why do you have to come to your parents' home and do that? It's not a joke." Amelia refused and complained to Dad, saying, letting the kids catch bugs at the park after a run. And how leaving sweaty, muddy clothes and bug eggs around would invite trouble. Bug-hating Amelia screamed and went to get the vacuum. This way, Dad seemed to be training the in-laws hard. Starting the morning with exercise, studying in the cool morning, not allowing playtime in the pool but making them do laps, improving all the kids' swimming times. Liam had no time for mischief, focusing solely on swimming. After summer, the kids were tanned and looked sharp, while all adults were worn out. During summer, I ignored SOS messages from Connor, not replying because they didn't reflect on their actions. Only asking for Dad to leave or for me to return for their convenience. Since the parents said it's okay to stay at the parents' home indefinitely, I decided not to return to the in-laws' house to protect Sophia's smile. I hope Connor realizes his mistakes soon, but if not, divorce is the only option. Fortunately, my former workplace has contacted me about returning, so supporting Sophia alone after divorce won't be an issue. Looking at Sophia playing with the parents, I felt it was good not to endure this summer. My name is Scarlett. While jogging around the neighborhood, I witnessed Mom scattering ashes from an urn with my name on it, calling out my name. Currently living with my Aunt Hannah due to various reasons. I had grievances against Mom but chose peace over revenge. However, seeing Mom cry out, "Why did God take Scarlett away?" brought back painful memories, prompting me to appear before her. Relatives looked shocked, and Mom turned pale, mumbling in confusion since they thought I was dead. What? In confusion. Because here I am, alive and well, when she thought I was gone. To Mom, I said, "Are you doing all this just to get attention and sympathy from people? Or wait, this bone is fake, right? It's because of stuff like this that you ended up in jail and yet you never learn." And with that, I walked away, leaving her behind. Behind me, I could hear Mom being grilled by relatives. "Scarlett is alive, isn't she? What's going on?" I thought she was always sick, but she looked so healthy. It felt incredibly satisfying. The old mom used to take me to cute cafes and popular parks, dress me in cute clothes, and do my hair in cute styles. She was also conscious about eating organic, so our meals were always more stylish and expensive than most families. Up to this point, she seemed like a wonderful mom. But on social media, she pretended to be the perfect mom with a wonderful family, while in reality, she did the opposite. When she took photos of me outside, she would say, "I don't want your clothes to get dirty or for you to get a weird tan. It would decrease your value. Let's go home." She forced me home. When we went to a cafe, after taking a photo of me with a cake, she'd say, "Eating something so high in calories will make you obese." And we'd leave without eating the cake she ordered. At home, she'd pretend we were eating organic by transferring supermarket deli food into fancy dishes and posting it as homemade. Dad couldn't stand her obsession with social media and disappeared when I was young, leaving me in a fatherless home. Mom was supposed to be a housewife on social media, but in reality, she was juggling several part-time jobs. Still, she clung to living in a fancy high-rise apartment for the likes of social media, making me struggle daily for food. While she played the role of a kind mom online, away from the camera, our home was a mess, and she hardly took care of me or the house. When I tried to talk to her because I wanted her attention, she'd say, "I'm busy with social media now. Don't talk to me. Actually, don't come near me. It's creepy." She treated me like a nuisance. Back then, I just wanted her praise, turning myself into a doll for her social media. Living like this, I was quickly pointed out at my school's health examination for being too small. It made sense since the most nutrition I got was from school lunches, given the lack of decent meals at home. Mom and I had to see a nutritionist. Where she? "To be honest, I've been hiding this from the school, but Scarlett has always been frail. She once was hospitalized for a heart condition, then developed asthma. It was tough. She's only just started to move around recently, so could we maybe watch her condition a bit longer? Tearfully claimed. For the record, I've never had heart disease or asthma, nor was I particularly sickly. But the nutritionist, seeing Mom's tears, believed every word. That must have been hard for you. And with sympathy, she spoke kindly to Mom. At that moment, while Mom was covering her face with her hands and sobbing, to me, it looked like she was clearly laughing. Looking back, she probably felt good about being seen as a diligent mother nursing her sick daughter by the nutritionist. After that, Mom started doing various things to make me sick. Not feeding me was just the beginning. She would douse me in cold water while I was naked, pull out my hair, and keep me from sleeping to weaken my body. Despite my pleas to stop, Mom would say, "You just need to do as I say. Not listening makes you a bad child," and inflicted violence where it couldn't be seen. On social media, Mom began playing the role of the unfortunate mother with a sick daughter, saying, "My daughter has an unidentified illness. I'm doing everything I can for her, but she's not getting better," and started asking for donations to help me. After the donations apparently went well, Mom quit her job one day. During the day, she clung to me. "You're sick. It's an incurable disease," chanting. Naturally, I couldn't go to school anymore, and that's when I truly felt my life was in danger. The one who saved me was Hannah. Hannah had always been worried about Mom's addiction to social media. So, she often admonished Mom, saying, "Stop just trying to look good on social media, and take a good look at Scarlett." But Mom never accepted Hannah's words. Just in case, Hannah kept an eye on Mom's social media. When she saw a post about me having a strange illness, Hannah contacted Mom. "Is Scarlett okay? I want to visit her," saying. "But Mom, don't come over, it would be a nuisance. Scarlett has a disease that gets worse if she meets anyone other than me," replied to Hannah. Afterward, feeling something was off, Hannah decided to visit our house. When Hannah arrived, it happened to be when Mom was out shopping. Though Mom had told me never to answer the door even if the bell rang, I couldn't help but cry out from my bed when I knew it was Hannah. "I'm hungry, help me," shouting. Hearing that, Hannah instructed me to unlock the door, so I desperately unlocked the front door. Seeing my condition, Hannah was in tears and speechless. After all, I was extremely thin from being fed very little by Mom, hadn't been allowed to shower, and wasn't even allowed to go to the toilet, so I was in diapers. Shocked by the bizarre scene, Hannah immediately called the police and an ambulance. Later, as I was being taken to the hospital by the ambulance, Mom returned from shopping and tried to take me back, saying, "Give Scarlett back. I need her. She's sick. She needs to be cared for at home, not at the hospital." But she was restrained by the police who arrived later. Afterwards, hospital tests revealed severe malnutrition and several broken ribs. Conversely, none of the incurable diseases Mom had mentioned on social media were found. Since then, I hadn't seen Mom. I remember bursting into tears from the emotion of eating a proper meal for the first time in a long time at the hospital. Continuing with meals and rehabilitation, I was discharged from the hospital. When I was discharged, it wasn't Mom who came to pick me up, but Hannah. Since then, I've been living with Hannah, her husband, and their children. At first, having been through so much with Mom, I was full of anxiety about living with strangers, but Hannah's family was very warm, and I quickly became close to them as family. Especially Hannah, who scolded and praised me like her own daughter. I admired her like a real mom. But sometimes, I wondered how Mom was doing, yet I couldn't bring myself to ask, remembering her would bring back too many memories and nearly send me into a panic. Hannah never talked to me about Mom either, so before I knew it, about 10 years had passed. When I got into the university I had hoped for and was about to start living on my own, I finally mustered the courage to ask Hannah about Mom. Hannah was a bit surprised when I asked about Mom, but then she didn't hide what had happened to her. Mom was taken away by the police for not feeding me and likely causing my fractures through violence. Later, she was charged with assault and other crimes and ended up in prison for about 3 years. At first, when I get out, I'll live with Scarlett again. We'll be happy this time, she said. But while in prison, she fell in love with a male guard, it seems, and said, "I've found new happiness. Scarlett will just be in the way now, so I'll give her up," and relinquished her parental rights. So when Mom was released, she disappeared without coming to pick me up. Thanks to that, even after Mom was released, I could continue to stay with Hannah. Of course, I felt hatred towards Mom, but more than that, I decided it was better to enjoy my life now with Hannah and her family, who saved me, and I stopped bringing up Mom. Years into my university studies, living with my feelings towards Mom sealed away, I encountered the scene mentioned earlier. Remembering my resentment towards Mom, I couldn't help but speak up. I'm surprised I didn't lash out physically. Mom's relatives knew what she had done to me, so the relatives I encountered with Mom earlier were from my disappeared dad's side. The relatives seemed to not recognize me at first when I spoke to Mom. But I have a birthmark on my forehead that's usually covered by my bangs. When I showed it, the relatives who knew me realized immediately that I was Scarlett. I don't know whose bone Mom had, but I decided I didn't want any further involvement with her. A few days later, Dad's relatives contacted Hannah's house, asking if she knew Mom's whereabouts. Naturally, Hannah didn't know where Mom was and said so, but at that time, she was told about Mom's recent strange behavior by the relatives. Apparently, Mom had been telling Dad's relatives for a while that Scarlett has contracted an incurable disease and doesn't have long to live. I need financial support for her treatment so she can live a little longer. With the demeanor of an actress as usual. Mom originally hated Dad, who had disappeared, so she had never tried to interact with Dad's relatives. So, when Mom came begging, the relatives were very shaken. But feeling guilty over Dad abandoning his wife and child and disappearing, they ended up supporting her with a total of about $100,000. Again, I have never had an incurable disease. Despite receiving the money, Mom wouldn't even allow them to visit me, gradually increasing the relatives' suspicion towards her. The next step Mom took was to pretend that I had died. Thinking that if I was gone from this world, the relatives couldn't complain, she later reported to them that I had passed away. Mom claimed she wanted a funeral with just the two of us and reported back to the relatives after finishing the ceremony. The relatives, though somewhat suspicious of Mom, attended my scattering ceremony, thinking she wouldn't fake cremains. During the scattering, Mom was sobbing. We used to play together by this river. So, I wanted her to be free here in the end. Saying, for the record, I have no memory of playing with Mom by that river. But Mom's acting convinced the relatives, and some were moved to tears, sympathizing with her. Then, as if I had descended from heaven, I appeared, revealing Mom's lie, and the relatives demanded their money back. However, Mom escaped from the relatives' questioning and has since disappeared. So now, the relatives are looking for anyone who knows about Mom, which is why they contacted Hannah. After hearing the relative's story, given that you've run into Scarlett now, she might come looking for you. I think you should move to a more secure place as soon as possible, Hannah said to me. Even though I had just moved in not too long ago, to avoid meeting Mom again, I decided to move to an apartment farther away. Having finished packing and feeling hungry, I went out to buy some food. On my way, I heard an eerily high voice. "Scarlett, I've finally found you." Slowly turning around, there was Mom with a sleazy smile. The mom I knew always kept herself well-groomed and looked younger than other moms of my classmates, but the mom standing before me now looked emaciated, making her seem about 60 years old, though she should only be around 45. Then, without being asked, Mom began to talk about her current situation. While in prison, Mom had fallen in love with a guard, but after being rejected and still nursing her broken heart, she was released. She had wanted to come to pick me up right after getting out, but she didn't know where Hannah's house was, and those who knew about Mom's case wouldn't tell her. Wandering the streets at night in despair, Mom stumbled upon a pub and ended up going inside. There, she got to drinking with a man in the pub who had a hard time, didn't you? You did well, offered her kind words, fulfilling her need for validation, and she became infatuated with him. Subsequently, Mom contributed money to the man, accruing debt. Realizing she was in trouble, Mom concocted a plan to claim I was sick and extort money from Dad's relatives, whom she despised. Her plan seemed to be working until I interfered, and now she was living a life on the run from the relatives she had deceived. After sharing her story, "Since you ruined my plan, it's your responsibility to hide me. You're an adult now, right? Think of it as repaying me, and work from morning to night to support me." Mom made an outrageous request. Moreover, Mom was utterly confident I wouldn't refuse her request, which was truly disgusting. "So, the only mom I have is Hannah, not you, so forget about getting any favors from me," I told her. Then, filled with anger, Mom retorted, "It's your fault I've been unhappy all this time. Who do you think raised you to be this big?" As she tried to lunge at me, hurling insults. Fortunately, there were other people around who quickly restrained her as a dangerous person. Thanks to a bystander who called the police, Mom was taken away by the authorities. Afterward, I reported what had happened to Hannah, who immediately informed Dad's relatives that Mom had been found. Thanks to that, Mom was caught by Dad's relatives. They tried to sue her to get their money back, but it had all been spent on dates with the man, leaving almost nothing. So, the relatives forced Mom, much to her dismay, to take on debt to repay them, finding no choice but to borrow from illegal lenders due to her unemployment, leaving her to pay off her debts with high interest by working nights. Because of this, I can enjoy my university life without fear of being threatened by Mom. Rumor has it that Scarlett surely won't ignore me in this dire situation. She will come to rescue me. Mom still laments. But I no longer think of Mom as my mother, so I won't be coming to get her. I'm Madison. I came to my sister-in-law Evelyn's wedding, but it seems like I was an unwelcome guest. As soon as I entered the bridal waiting room, Zoe started yelling, "Why are you here, Madison? I wanted to celebrate Evelyn's wedding." "But, you were told not to come, weren't you?" "I heard that. But Richard received an invitation." Richard is my husband's name. He's Evelyn's biological brother, so it's not strange for him to get an invitation to the wedding. Logically, that would mean I, his wife, should attend too. But Zoe, my mother-in-law, didn't see it that way. "We only wanted Richard to come. You didn't have to show your face." "That's harsh. Enough. Just go back home now." "Why? I even brought a gift." When I showed her the envelope with the gift money, Zoe snatched it from me. "I'll take this. But leave, now." "Why won't you let me celebrate?" "Because you're a dropout." Having a dropout in the family is embarrassing." Zoe yelled at me like that. At that moment, my husband next to me turned to Zoe and said, "Mom, like I said before, education doesn't matter." "Quiet, you should just keep your mouth shut." "But if you had married someone decent, this wouldn't be happening." My husband was left speechless by Zoe's words. Oh no, this is bad. This was supposed to be the last chance. She will never change. If that's the case, I have my own plan. I made up my mind and said to Zoe, "Then I'll leave, since I'm not recognized as a family member." "Oh, please do. That would be a relief," Zoe said to me with a sarcastic smile. So I reluctantly left. "Hey, Madison, are you really going?" "Yes, of course. You should stay at the wedding." "No way. If they don't want you, I'm leaving too." My husband took my hand. Then he turned to Evelyn and said, "We're leaving. You won't regret this, right?" "Are you asking me?" Evelyn replied, feigning ignorance. Annoyed, my husband said, "Of course. You're the star today, sis. Then go. I'd rather not have a worthless brother around." "Don't regret it." "I won't. I'll just say my brother couldn't make it for some reason." Evelyn dismissed us. Eventually, we left the bridal waiting room. Outside, I asked my husband, "Are you sure about this?" "Yeah, I'm done with that kind of family." "So, shall we start our plan?" "Exactly. Let's give them a taste of their own medicine," he said with a smile. That smile. The smile that had always encouraged me. My difficult childhood was bearable because of his smile. Because of his smile, I am who I am today. As soon as I realized that, all the bitter memories I had locked away came flooding back. My family was never wealthy. But that didn't mean we were unhappy. My parents were both alive and kind to me. We just had to be frugal and couldn't afford family trips or visits to leisure facilities. So now I think I just had to hold back a little bit. That's why I wanted to grow up fast. Earn my own money and do everything I had to put off. That's all I thought about. So, during a career counseling session in middle school, I told my teacher, "I want to work as soon as possible, so I'm not planning on going to high school." Of course, my mom and the teacher were shocked. They both said, "It's better to go to high school." But I was determined. Or rather, I already had plans for after middle school. First, apprentice at a local bakery. Learn to bake while working as a trainee. Once I could make delicious bread, train somewhere else and become independent. To be a baker, I didn't need a formal education. In hindsight, it was just a child's fantasy. But back then, I thought it was a brilliant idea. So, I confidently shared it with my mom and the teacher. Of course, the teacher was dumbfounded. But Mom was different. "If you're that determined, Madison, then go ahead and try." "Mom, really?" "But remember, if it fails, you have to take responsibility." "Responsibility?" "If you give up, you'll lead a life full of hardships without a job. If you're okay with that, then go ahead." I nodded without hesitation. At that time, I didn't understand why Mom said that. I began to understand the truth in Mom's words. But a few months later, after I started my apprenticeship at the bakery, it was when I felt like breaking down and called Mom. She told me a story. "Actually, your dad did the same thing, Madison." "What? Dad did?" "He quit school in high school to pursue music. Everyone opposed it, of course, including Mom. And then? Ultimately, He gave up music before making a debut because Mom got pregnant. Why? He thought our child was more important than his dream. That's when I first understood why our family wasn't wealthy. At the same time, I felt ashamed of myself. Dad gave up his dream for me and our family. But here I was, ready to give up just because things got tough. Was I okay with being so half-hearted? Sorry, Mom. I'll try again. That's good. But when things get really tough, you can always come back home. Eh? You mean give up? I'm not saying that. Dad and I will support you. I felt so grateful for Mom's kindness that I regained my motivation. And so, I continued my apprenticeship at the bakery. Years later, I was told I had mastered the basics of being a baker, and my mentor sent me abroad for further training. My destination was France. I was instructed to learn the authentic way of making croissants. I was definitely apprehensive. Going to France was intimidating. But if I was going to give up, I shouldn't have entered this field in the first place. Even if I couldn't speak French, I'd make it work somehow. With that determination, I went to a bakery in France run by an acquaintance of my mentor. Once there, I realized my worries were unnecessary. Of course, the language barrier was a challenge. But the acquaintance spoke English, so I had no trouble working. Plus, there was a system for apprentices to attend school while working, so I could attend a local high school and earn a salary at the same time. It was tough, but it turned out to be a great experience. After 5 years of training, I returned home. Back at my mentor's shop, I started working again as a croissant baker. The croissants I made, honed in France, sold incredibly well. My mentor was overjoyed that his decision to send me to train had paid off. When I made them for my parents, they loved them too. As time passed, I finally decided to start my own bakery. But the anxiety was overwhelming. I dropped out of school, so I knew nothing about managing a business. This is hopeless. There's too much I don't know. I can't do this alone. I was worrying alone in the park. When it happened, a man passing by spoke to me. You look troubled. Is something wrong? No, just a little worried. What's on your mind? Well, I was so anxious, I ended up sharing my concerns with this stranger. I wouldn't usually do such a thing. But I was that desperate. After hearing my story, the man smiled and said to me, "If that's the case, why not ask someone for help?" Eh? Trying to do everything yourself is why you get so lost. Is that so? Every company relies on teamwork, not just one person doing it all. It was such an obvious statement. But I hadn't realized it before. I see. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you. No problem, we all need help sometimes. Could I ask your name? I'm Richard. After that, I exchanged contact information with the man with the charming smile. Each time I had doubts, I contacted him and received various advice. Gradually, we started to share personal stories and eventually began dating. Being mature adults, we quickly considered marriage. And just 6 months after we started dating, we got married. After submitting our marriage registration, I went to greet my husband's parents. To my surprise, Zoe and my father-in-law were furious. Zoe glared at me and said, "What do you do for a living?" "I work at a bakery." "A bakery? And you dared to seduce Richard, being such a lowly woman?" "There's no need to say it like that." I was shocked. Feeling like crying, my husband next to me said to Zoe, "Mom, don't talk like that. What's wrong with being a baker? Selling bread is something anyone can do. You must not be very smart." "That's not true." Madison is intelligent. Be quiet. Our family runs a printing company. Marrying someone unintelligent could ruin it. Such an absurd fantasy. I thought so, but I couldn't say anything. Talking back would only make things worse. I knew that, so I kept enduring it. Then, my father-in-law looked at me and said, "There's no need to go that far. As long as she has a good education, it's fine." Sorry about my education. I hesitated. It wasn't that I was ashamed of being a dropout. But I thought he meant a proper education, like a university degree. My reaction seemed to make things worse. Suddenly, my father-in-law's eyes narrowed. "No education? You mean you only went to high school?" "No. Don't scare me. Any university is fine, even a women's college. Actually, I'm a dropout. Dropout." At my words, my father-in-law collapsed on the spot. At the same time, Zoe screamed, "A dropout? You mean you only graduated middle school?" Yes. I wanted to become a baker. I had attended a local high school in France. But I wasn't sure if that counted as an education. Saying I was a dropout seemed to have made things worse. "Don't be ridiculous. I will never accept a dropout." Zoe erupted in anger, and I was helpless. After that, my husband tried to calm Zoe down, but to no avail. Finally, Zoe belittled us like this. "A dropout for a wife, such a lowly woman can't be introduced to our relatives. We've already submitted the marriage registration." My husband argued back, and Zoe, red-faced, said, "Fine, you're disowned. Leave now." "What about my work? I'm handling projects at the company, aren't I?" "Quiet. That can be figured out. Just submit your resignation and never come back." And so, we were driven out of my in-laws' house. In the end, my husband resigned from the family company. We became estranged from my in-laws' house. "Are you okay with this? Leaving things unresolved with your parents?" I asked my husband, and he said, "Of course. Discrimination based on education is unacceptable." "Madison, you're amazing." "Thank you." Thinking that those people were my family terrifies me, honestly. He said, almost spitting the words out. Then one day, while we were enjoying a leisurely weekend morning, my husband's mobile phone rang. "Sorry, just a moment." "It's a call," he said, sitting on the sofa and answering the phone. "Hello?" As soon as he answered, his face turned stern. He put the phone on speaker, making it audible to me. I tilted my head in confusion, and then a familiar voice came from the other side. "Richard, are you listening?" It was unmistakably Zoe's voice. As my heart raced, my husband responded to Zoe's voice. "I'm listening, Mom." "So, what do you want?" "Well, it's not exactly a matter, but..." She sounded off. This must be something inconvenient for Zoe. As I thought this, my husband, getting impatient, said, "If you don't have anything important, I'm hanging up. We're busy." Wait. Actually, Evelyn is getting married. Big sis? My husband has a sister named Evelyn, 2 years older. I had heard she worked at a company reception but had never met her. "Yes. And her wedding is coming up soon. You're not telling me to come, are you? If her own brother doesn't attend the wedding, who knows what the relatives will say?" "That's true. So, you'll come, right, Richard? You only ask for favors when it suits you, huh? Are you still mad about that?" "How can I not be? You insulted the person I love." "Wait, I'm sorry. Isn't an apology enough? I'm really sorry. Her hollow words were clear. Still, having been formally apologized to, it would be hard for my husband to refuse attending the wedding. Indeed, looking at him next to me, he was frowning. With a sigh, he said, "Fine. I'll go to the wedding." That's a relief, Richard. And who is the guy she's marrying? He's the son of someone who works as a buyer at an old department store, a man named Stephen. He's really wonderful. Zoe continued to boast unreservedly. As we listened half-heartedly, Zoe finally said, "For now, just make sure you, Richard, take off work for the date on the invitation." Just me? Yes, that's right. That dropout girl doesn't need to come. Tell her that too. Mom, a dropout wouldn't know common sense or manners, right? Important people will be there, and she'll just embarrass herself. Enough. As my husband began to speak, I tugged at his sleeve. I shook my head, signaling him not to say anything. Thinking there was no objection, Zoe continued. Anyway, we don't need a dropout wife there. Just need you, her own son. By now. And with that, the call ended. Even after the call, my husband's anger didn't subside. But it made me really happy that he was angry for me. Putting that aside, I suggested something to my husband. Why don't we give Zoe one last chance? What do you mean? What's this last chance? Let's go to the wedding together. If she's changed her mind, okay. If not, then we'll get our revenge, big time. And what do you have in mind? Well, I shared the plan I had thought of while listening to Zoe. Listening silently. That sounds interesting. My husband agreed. We decided to watch Zoe's reaction at the wedding and then choose our form of revenge. On the wedding day, I was turned away as soon as I entered the bridal waiting room. And, of course, they took the gift money we brought. If it's come to this, we have to get back at them thoroughly. Get ready. I'll turn this into the worst wedding ever. I murmured and headed with my husband to the groom's waiting room. Knocking on the door, the groom's father immediately peeked out. Yes? Who might you be? Pleased to meet you, we're the priest's brother and sister-in-law. My husband introduced us. At that moment, the groom's father's expression changed. You're Richard. And Madison too, really? Indeed. Sorry for the other day. As I bowed my head, the groom's father also bowed. Not at all. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us during your busy schedule. The reason for this conversation? We actually knew the groom's dad. We realized this while listening to Zoe's boasting. Zoe mentioned that the groom's dad was a buyer at an established department store. We became acquainted with the groom's dad just before Zoe's call. After I started my own business as a baker, specializing in croissants. My husband quit his job at his father's company and joined me at the bakery. Thanks to his support behind the scenes, my shop quickly stabilized. Being a stylish croissant specialty store, it was very popular with women. It became famous instantly on social media, and my store grew rapidly. Naturally, the buyer from the department store noticed my shop's rapid growth. He visited my store and said, "I'd like to sell your croissants at our department store." In essence, they wanted to sell my bread at their department store. It wasn't a bad offer. But with a limited staff, I wasn't sure if we could handle the department store too. So, at that time, I declined. But the groom's dad, being a skilled buyer, didn't give up easily. He pleaded, citing my bread's popularity, even suggesting a limited time offer. Eventually, we couldn't agree on terms, and the deal fell through. Still, if there's an opportunity in the future. He left saying. That's why we knew the groom's dad. As he puzzled over our visit, he asked, "The wedding is about to start. Is there something you need?" Well, actually. My husband then began to explain what happened in the bridal waiting room. About how I was demeaned for being a dropout, about being turned away. As the story unfolded, the groom's dad's face twisted in anger, and even the groom, Stephen, began to get angry. Evelyn said that too? Yes, well, I replied, and Stephen, his face turning red, said, Dad, let's go to the bridal waiting room right away. We can't stay silent about this. I'll go ahead. You two come along too. Encouraged by Stephen, we followed the groom's dad, who had dashed out of the room. By the time we reached the bridal waiting room, it was already a battleground. The groom's dad was shouting, and Raphael and Zoe were deeply apologizing in front of him. Evelyn was also there, looking downcast in a corner, and the atmosphere was out of control. In the midst of this, the groom's dad berated Zoe. Her croissants are extremely popular. How dare you belittle such a wonderful thing? But she's a dropout. Zoe still tried to argue at this critical moment. Her boldness was notable, but in this situation, it was better not to say anything. Indeed, her rebuttal only made the groom's dad angrier. Be quiet! Education hardly matters in business. But I myself am only a middle school graduate, middle school. After the groom's dad said that, there was nothing more to be said. Afterward, Raphael and Zoe were just reprimanded by the groom's dad. Once things calmed down, the groom said to Evelyn, Sorry, but I didn't expect Evelyn to be such a person. Can we call off the wedding? Wait, you're joking, right? It's no joke. The groom was clear. In contrast, Evelyn, just before her wedding, was shocked. She collapsed, speechless. Naturally, with the wedding called off, we distributed my freshly baked croissants, intended as favors, to the guests as an apology. Despite various reactions, we managed to see them off. Later, Evelyn, who had quit her job in anticipation of marriage, returned to her old job. However, the story of the wedding day breakup became a major rumor in the office. Embarrassed, she soon resigned. Afterward, she worked part-time but didn't last long, reportedly, because she couldn't explain why she left her previous job. Troubled, Evelyn called me. Can I work at your shop? Needless to say, I refused. But thinking about her distress, I wonder if I should have been kinder. Now, Zoe is also at Fael's company, but who knows how long that will last. Because Fael's company is also struggling. Many clients have left after hearing about the wedding fiasco. It's likely to go bankrupt, but it's none of my business, so I'll pretend not to know. As for me, I'm very busy. As an apology for the wedding incident, I've agreed to open a shop in Stephen's dad's department store. So, I plan to keep myself busy and forget about my in-laws. We'll be living with my real mom, so you can go to some cheap facility for the elderly. Good luck with your life then. My name is Linda. I've been married to Snow for 10 years. Snow has a child from a previous marriage, Carrie. Perhaps because we got married during Carrie's teenage years, Carrie has never really taken to me. Despite my efforts to get along, it seemed to only make things worse, and it became evident that Carrie disliked me more as time went on. So, I've been keeping a respectful distance. I inherited an apartment from my parents and manage it as a rental property. It brings in a considerable amount each month, which I've been saving for a comfortable retirement since I have no reason to use my money. Snow has a lot of pride and can't stand things not going his way, which has made it difficult for him to keep a job for long. As a result, he earns less than the average man of his age. That's also why I never shared the details of my rental income with him. One day, as I was cleaning like usual, Carrie came home, slamming the door open. "It's so hot! Wow, this room is stifling! I can't believe you can stand it here! Unbelievable!" Saying that, Carrie turned down the air conditioning. "Welcome home. You're early. It's too hot to work, so I left early." "Left early? Did you tell anyone at work you were leaving?" "Why should I? Someone will notice." Hearing this, I sighed internally. Carrie is capricious, acting on whim without much thought for consequences. Like today, leaving work early on a whim, or canceling plans with friends if not feeling it. Moreover, Carrie complains when friends don't go along with plans. It seems Carrie doesn't realize this behavior has been pushing people away. I've even received a call from Carrie's workplace before. It was about Carrie's attitude at work, saying, "Pock." We've sent to him multiple times about his work attitude, but there's been no improvement. Could the family possibly discuss this? However, when I mentioned this to Snow, he was furious with the company. He told Carrie to quit such an inflexible job, and Carrie did. He has always doted on Carrie, spoiling her considerably. Of course, it's natural to cherish one's daughter, but he never disciplined her, always bending to her will. As a stepmother due to remarriage, I felt it was wrong to continue this way. I tried to teach Carrie about empathy, manners, and posture, but she wouldn't accept it, and my husband told me not to interfere, leading me to give up. While resuming cleaning and sighing, Carrie's mobile phone started ringing. Yikes, it's my manager. "Hello?" "No, I've already gone home for the day." "Oh? I forgot about that meeting with a client today. Please apologize on my behalf." It was clear from listening how selfish her reasoning was. Watching her talk to her manager while lounging on the sofa, I sighed again. Later that night, Snow came home. As I was warming up his dinner, Carrie entered the dining room. "Dad, you're home. Listen, it was so hot today, right? That's why I left work early." She began telling him about her day. "Really? So you got a lecture from your manager for that? Why not quit if the company restricts your freedom? Right? I've been thinking about it." Listening to their conversation, I felt dismayed. But I knew better than to intervene, as it would only lead to a quarrel, so I silently prepared his dinner. While he was eating, Carrie, talking and eating, caused him to drop his fork. As I picked it up silently, he started. "This fork is hard to use. You bought this, right? If it was easier to use, I wouldn't drop it." This was nothing new. He has such high pride that he never admits fault. "Really, Linda, you're so inconsiderate." "I'm sorry. I'll buy something easier to use." Apologizing seemed to satisfy him, and I occasionally reminisced about how I didn't realize how proud he was when we were dating, thinking he was a kind person. Maybe I'm just tired. After a while, Carrie went back to her room, and I was washing the dinner dishes. "Today we started using a new tool at work, but it doesn't suit me, so I submitted a feedback form to my boss." "A feedback form?" "Yes. I can't have it slowing down my work. Honestly, doing things manually is best." "But if it's the company's decision, shouldn't you try to adapt?" Saying that made my husband visibly upset. "Are you saying I'm wrong?" "No, that's not it at all. I'm sorry. If this proposal doesn't get approved, I'm quitting my job. I don't want to work under these conditions." It seems the saying "like father, like Sun perfectly describes this situation. Snow, like Carrie, has a hard time sticking with a job. At the slightest dissatisfaction, he's ready to quit, having left several companies already. He's 53 this year. Does he really think finding another job at his age will be easy? Talking with him only tires me out, so I decide to go to bed early. A month passed, and I started to notice something off with my husband. It seemed like my intuition was right. He always had his phone with him, now locked tight. On his days off, he'd head out for golf with his boss every week, and he started coming home later from work. I couldn't help but wonder if he was having an affair, but oddly, I wasn't as shocked as I thought I'd be. Is it because of age? Or has my love for him simply withered away? Feeling restless about it all, I decided to hire a detective to look into it. The detective was very understanding and agreed to take the case. About 3 weeks after hiring them, I got the results. It was bad news. My husband was indeed having an affair. Surprisingly, I was able to stay calm as I listened. But hearing who it was with felt like a knife twisting in my heart. It was his ex-wife. Among the photos the detective showed me, some even included Carrie, showing they'd been meeting up without me knowing. Realizing I was betrayed by the two people I could call family was devastating. Seeing my distress, the detective offered, "If you're considering a divorce, I can introduce you to a lawyer who specializes in such cases." I took the lawyer's business card just to be cautious, let them know I'd talk things over, and left with the investigation results. When my husband returned home late at night, and with Carrie already asleep, I broached the subject. I showed him the detective's findings and demanded an explanation. At first, he was taken aback by the results, but then he quickly turned defensive and started questioning me. "Why are you doing this? You trying to make a fool out of me?" "I didn't want to make a fool out of you. I was just concerned about your behavior and wanted to know the truth." "So, are you satisfied now?" "No, I want to hear it from you. What were you thinking? Having an affair?" "An affair? It might look that way. But it's your fault, you know." "What do you mean?" "I married you, even though you were second-hand, and you don't earn money, you're getting older, and you've never shown any gratitude for everything I've done for you. Is there any benefit for me being with you?" Hearing this, I realized he had no idea about our financial situation. He didn't know that the rent and living expenses were almost entirely covered by my rental income. His salary from job hopping surely wasn't increasing, likely much less than his peers. He was oblivious to that fact. "Are you serious?" "Of course I am. And you should know, the affair was with my ex-wife. Carrie is happy about us getting back together. There's no need for me to continue living with you. Carrie's happiness is my priority." "I understand how you feel. So, we're thinking of divorce then?" "It's not a matter of thinking, it's decided. It's actually good timing that this came out now. Get the divorce papers first thing tomorrow." Facing such cruel statements, I no longer felt sadness. Instead, I was overwhelmed by regret, wondering why I ever ended up with this person. "Understood. I'll go to the municipal office tomorrow." "How will you explain it to Carrie?" "Don't worry about it, I'll tell her. She hates you anyway." "Okay." Though I knew he was not one to admit his faults, I was still taken aback by his blatant lack of concern. This unexpected reaction left me feeling even more dejected. Realizing I had never been needed hit me hard, making me question my entire existence up until now. The next day, I went to the municipal office to get the divorce papers. Stopping by a convenience store to buy a drink, I rummaged through my bag and found a business card. A lawyer. It was the card the detective had given me the day before. Considering the situation had escalated to divorce, I decided to seek advice. After collecting the divorce papers, I called the law firm straight away. Mentioning the detective's referral, I was able to smoothly secure an appointment. There had been a cancellation for the next day, so I booked that slot immediately. While preparing dinner as usual, Carrie came home. Ew, making dinner even though you're getting a divorce? Is this some kind of lingering attachment? It seemed she had already been informed by Snow. If you don't want it, you don't have to eat. As I continued cooking, Carrie started complaining, clearly displeased. Why did Dad even marry you? I was against it from the start. Living under the same roof as an old person has been suffocating. Hearing about the divorce made me genuinely happy. Well, that's good for you. I also hated your pretentious attitude, acting as if you're not affected at all. Now you'll be all alone. Yes, I guess I will. I'll make the most of it. Carrie left the house with a click of her tongue. That night, neither of them returned, and I ate dinner alone. The next day, I went to the law firm for my appointment and explained my situation to the lawyer. He suggested suing my husband and his affair partner for compensation, and I agreed to let him represent me. Returning home, I found my husband and Carrie waiting. Where have you been? A housewife leaving the house. Who do you think you are? Really? Hope you weren't out spending Dad's money. I went to get the divorce papers from the office. So you're home today? Placing the divorce papers on the table, Carrie rejoiced, and Snow started to fill them out immediately. Oh, hurry up and pack your things and leave. Carrie said this nastily, laughing beside my husband who was filling out the divorce papers. Me? Of course. You're the one who has to leave. Why? Because we're getting divorced. It's obvious. Do as Carrie says. We'll be living with my real mom, so you can go to some cheap facility for the elderly. Even though I pay $2,000 in rent? I thought, but if they were going that far, I decided I might as well leave. All right, I'll leave. If that's what you want. They had no other choice. You were just in the way. Ugh, hurry up and pack your stuff. Disgusted by their insults, I retreated to my room to pack my belongings. Now we can live as a family with Mom again. Yay! Indeed. It's my fault for marrying such a person, causing you distress. Let's be a happy family of 3 again. Their loud celebrations were audible even from my room. Feeling degraded, I decided to move to a retirement home I had considered for my old age. The next day, I took my things and headed there. On the way, I called my lawyer to discuss the settlement. The lawyer, equally appalled, reassured me, suggesting that moving might actually bring me happiness. I was headed to a renowned luxury retirement home, known nationwide, requiring a $1,000 entry fee. Despite its cost, its popularity was unmatched due to its excellent facilities. I had been saving up the rental income for when I turned 60, paying for the entrance fee to what I thought we'd enjoy together. But now, it seems even better that I'll be there alone. Leaving the legal matters to my lawyer, I also sought a bit of retribution by contacting a certain service. I didn't expect things to end without incident. A week after I left, Carrie called. Hello? What do you want? What do I want? Some junk shop just came and took all our furniture. What's the meaning of this? Oh, I sold it. Sold it? How dare you do such a thing without permission? Of course. It was all mine, after all. What? What are you talking about? Exactly that. All the furniture and appliances were mine. Since I no longer live there, they're unnecessary, right? But that sofa was my favorite. I used it the most, so it's mine, right? I don't follow that logic. If you liked it so much, you should buy it yourself. I believe that sofa was around $13,000. $13,000? Are you kidding? But the bed! That bed is mine. Dad bought it for me. I was the one who bought that bed. He just told me to buy it. What? But wasn't it bought with Dad's money? I bought it with my money. That's why I'm saying I sold my belongings. Everything that's gone, I purchased. No way! Everything in the house. But this is too much. Bring everything back. That's impossible. You'll have to figure it out yourselves. Ugh. Fine. I'll tell Dad on you. Feel free. Carrie hung up immediately. I anticipated a call from my ex-husband soon after, and sure enough, my phone rang with his name displayed. Hello? I heard from Carrie. What have you done? You're aware, right? Everything was mine. Even so, you left, so the ownership transferred to me. What's yours is also mine. What are you talking about? I never transferred any ownership. If you want something, you should buy it yourself. That's because you did this on your own. You should take responsibility. It's absurd I have to spend money because of you. Wow, your pride really knows no bounds. I'm busy, so I'm hanging up now. Wait a minute. I noticed my ex was trying to say something more, but I hung up without hesitation. I was in the middle of a spa treatment, after all. In the luxury retirement home I moved into, there's a relaxation room where you can get spa treatments by reservation. I ignored the multiple calls that followed. The next day, I received a call from a payphone. Curious, I answered, and it was Carrie. You picked up. Why aren't you answering your phone? We're in trouble here without the furniture and appliances. Put everything back. It's you. As I said yesterday, if you need those things, buy them yourselves. Dad says he has no money. You took it all, didn't you? No, why would I? His bank book and card are still at the house. What? Then why does he say he has no money? Probably because he has a spending habit. Maybe he has no savings. What? Then how have we been living? I was covering living expenses. Huh? You're not working. What are you talking about? I don't work, but I had an income from rent. What do you mean? Rental income? So you were managing properties? Then what was Dad spending his salary on? Yes, so I could afford to pay for our living expenses. I don't know what Snow spent his salary on. You should ask him directly. Are we done here? Wait. If you have so much money, then why? I hung up the phone. They had no idea how they had been living, such foolish people. I felt no sympathy anymore. There's no way they could live on my ex's meager salary alone. Despite knowing his own salary, he seemed to think he was supporting us with it alone. Even though his income wouldn't even cover the rent. It was my rental income that made our life possible. Now that we're divorced, their standard of living must have significantly dropped, but that's none of my concern anymore. By now, the real mom, his affair partner, must have moved in, so they should sort out their living situation amongst themselves. Calls from Carrie and my ex continued but gradually became less frequent. As I was getting used to my new life, the lawyer called. We've successfully filed for damages, and the other party is willing to pay. It should be resolved smoothly. The fact that my prideful ex-husband agreed without any complaints was slightly surprising, but since the lawyer said so, it must be true. I was happy thinking that this would finally sever our ties. Thank you. I appreciate your help a bit longer. Of course, let's keep at it. After hanging up with the lawyer, I felt a bit more upbeat than usual, thinking about taking a swim in the facility's pool. Then the phone rang again. Checking my mobile, I saw my ex-husband's name, appearing for the first time in about a month. Hesitant, but not wanting to stir things up after coming this far, I decided to answer the call. Hello, it's me. Rent hasn't been withdrawn since last month. I need your help. Help? For rent? His request was baffling. You were supposed to handle the rent. Think about our situation without furniture and only essentials, and you're not even paying the rent. I have nothing to do with it anymore. Why should I pay rent for a place I don't live in, especially since we're divorced? As I said that, he seemed to get instantly infuriated. What did you say? How much more selfish can you get? This was originally your house. You were the one who told me to leave. The selfishness is on your end. If you keep this up, I won't pay the compensation. Just pay the rent already. From what standpoint is he even speaking? This is beyond just pride. I felt disillusioned all over again. Could you discuss the compensation with the lawyer, please? No matter what you say, I'm not paying the rent. Maybe you should check what common sense is. What's with that tone? Who do you think has been supporting you all this time? Well, actually, I have. Huh? I thought I was the one supporting you. So, whatever difficult life you're leading now, I don't care. Goodbye. I hung up on Snow and headed to the pool. I was looking forward to a nice swim, but he ruined the mood. However, on my way to the pool, I ran into a friend I made at the facility, who was also headed to the pool, and we had a great time swimming together. Maybe I'm simpler than I thought. After coming back from the pool, I saw my phone lighting up with notifications. It seemed there had been a call. Feeling a sense of dread, I checked to see that it was indeed Carrie. As I hesitated whether to call back, my mobile phone started ringing again. Sigh, hello. What's with that sigh? And what do you mean by not paying the rent? It was about the rent again. Why should I pay for a house I don't even live in anymore? It seems obvious to anyone. I've already told Snow, why should I pay it? We're divorced now. I don't live there, and I have no relation to you two. Why should I pay rent for strangers? So, you're just trying to make us suffer, huh? Mom was crying. You sold all our furniture and appliances, and now there's rent overdue, and on top of that, a compensation claim. How much more trouble do you plan to cause us? Carrie spoke as if they were the victims. I couldn't help but think she's going to have a hard time if she keeps up this mentality. Do you know what goes around comes around means? The actions you take will always come back to you. How is it that 3 adults can't even pay rent? What was your plan for living? Didn't you think about anything? Challenged, Carrie began to falter. Well, that's because Dad said he was a manager and his income was high, so we thought we'd just live off his salary like before. I thought life wouldn't change even if you left and Mom came. He's a manager. I couldn't help but laugh. My ex-husband, who has never held a job for more than 3 years, a manager. Impossible. It became clear he had been inflating his ego to his daughter with baseless pride. Don't laugh. Carrie got defensive. Such a pitiful family. I don't know about the affair partner, but they must share similar values to consider reuniting. Snow has never been promoted. He's never even been a manager, let alone a department head. What? That's not what I heard. Why don't you face reality for once? Reevaluate your situation, all 3 of you. After I said that, Carrie hung up with a sob. It sounded like she was crying, but I don't regret what I said because I don't believe I was wrong. Later, the lawyer informed me that my ex had been hesitant about the compensation payment but suddenly agreed and completed the payment. This sudden change in attitude made me suspect something was amiss. The lawyer advised caution, uncertain of what my ex might do next. Though it's unlikely he knows my current whereabouts or could directly confront me, I decided not to answer any more calls from him, now that the compensation issue was resolved. With the divorce finalized and the compensation settled, our business was concluded. After thanking the lawyer, who assured me of their support in case of any future issues, I expressed my gratitude once again and ended the call politely. Despite having resolved everything, a lingering sense of unease and a bad premonition turned into reality. The next day, I received a call from the front desk to my room, saying a family claiming to be my relatives had arrived. It was my ex-husband and Carrie. My bad feeling was confirmed. Since I no longer considered them family, I asked them to be sent away, which they agreed to do, relieving me. I wondered how they found out where I was and what they wanted now, but decided not to dwell on it since I had chosen to cut ties. Later, as I was heading to the facility's restaurant, I happened to glance at the lobby. To my surprise, my ex-husband and Carrie were still there, arguing with the security guard and the front desk staff. Shocked, I instinctively hid. It was inconceivable they were causing trouble for others to this extent. My frustration grew. We're here because our mom lives here. Don't make us say it again. Exactly. Get our room ready now. And it better be the best one. We're hungry, so prepare some food too. This place serves a full course meal every day, right? Awesome. Hearing their words pushed me to my limit. Enough already, I said as I approached the lobby. Mom, you finally came. Come on, take us to our room quickly. We were arranged to live in such a nice place with you. You're finally being useful. Their attitude had changed 180 degrees, making me feel uneasy. They looked at me with full smiles, the kind that made me uncomfortable for the first time in my life. The front desk staff and security guard apologized to me, looking sorry. However, the ones at fault were this parent and child. Don't apologize. You've done nothing wrong, I told them, and they gave me a kind smile in return. So, you sold the furniture and didn't pay the rent because of this? I finally understand. No, you got it wrong. There's no place for you here. Please leave. What are you talking about? You moved here for us, right? Their entitlement irritated me to no end. That's ridiculous. Stop it. This is my home. If you really want to move in, do the paperwork yourselves. When I yelled, Carrie and my ex-husband seemed a bit shaken. They had never heard me raise my voice before. What's got you so mad? Because we came late? To think we bothered to come here, and this is the reception we get. But we'll let it slide this time. Hurry up and show us to our room. I really can't get through to you, can I? All right, I'll show you to your room. They seemed relieved at my words, completely missing the point I was trying to make. Could you please call the police? Right now. I asked the staff. Mentioning the police made them panic instantly. What do you mean? Police? What are you talking about? I did say I'd show you to your room, didn't I? It's probably at the police station. Lucky you. And if you really want to stay here, come back when you're over 60. I smiled sweetly, and the front desk staff immediately picked up the phone. Wait! No need for the police, right? We came here for you. For me? When did I ever ask you to come? We couldn't find where you were living, so we hired a detective. And when we heard you were living in such a nice place, we decided to come. From Carrie's words, it became clear how they found this place. It seemed their only motive was money. So you're after money, right? Unable to pay a rent of $2,000, unable to fully furnish your home, and from our interactions, you figured I had money and decided to look for me, right? They fell silent at my direct hit. No, we didn't know the rent was $2,000, and Mom thought living with us in that house meant a luxurious life. She wanted back in, but after seeing the reality, she left. Carrie! Don't say that! Don't you have any pride? But, as they started to argue in front of me, I could only watch in disbelief. Anyway, if you can afford to live here, you should be using that money for us, your family. Since you're rich, you can pay back the loans we took out for the affairs compensation money, right? Hearing this, everything clicked. They were evicted, life became tough, and they hired a detective with their last dime to find me, discovering I lived in a luxurious retirement home, planning to mooch off me. Assuming I was wealthy, they paid the affairs compensation with borrowed money, intending for me to repay their debts, a pitiful and absurd story. Who could make sense of such a situation? I have nothing left to say to you. We're complete strangers now. The police will be here soon, so just wait. As I said this coldly, they seemed to finally grasp their situation a bit, turning pale and starting to shake. Okay, I get it. I was wrong. Please, spare us from the police. Let's start over. I apologize too. I'm sorry. Please forgive us. You could see the disdain in the eyes of the people around us. I felt the same way, devoid of any sympathy for these two hopeless individuals. As they were apologizing profusely to me, the police arrived. The front desk staff and security explained the situation, and I also shared the details with the police, who then took the two away. No! Not the police! Let go of me! Stop it! Watching them being led away screaming and yelling, I felt a sense of closure. As I sighed, the front desk staff brought me a warm cup of tea and invited me to sit on a sofa in the lobby to rest. The warm tea tasted incredibly good. Later on, it turned out that my ex-husband and Carrie had been evicted for failing to pay their rent. Moreover, assuming they could live with me in the luxurious retirement home, they had quit their jobs. After being released by the police, they had nowhere to go and were staying in a motel. However, as their meager savings began to dwindle, they hurriedly looked for work and found a live-in job. They were relieved to have found a place to live, but the job was demanding, rife with cliques, and they struggled with interpersonal relationships, barely scraping by on a low salary. As for me, I'm living a life of elegance I wouldn't have experienced had I stayed married. Sometimes I indulge in spa treatments, other times I exercise, or I go out for karaoke with friends, leading a very fulfilling life. There are also plenty of events within the facility, which has led to an increase in my hobbies. Becoming friends with other residents and having more friends has allowed me to lead a luxuriously busy life filled with fun and happiness. Don't leave the TV on, and either turn off the lights in the living room or your room. Got it. I'll make sure to save electricity. I left the house to go shopping far away. Whether leaving or staying at home, we as a family are committed to saving energy, like remembering to turn off lights and setting the air conditioner to the right temperature. Today, like always, we reminded each other in the family, and I went out. However, a few hours later when I returned, our dear home had completely changed. Since you love saving so much, I'll save electricity for you. The sound that echoed maliciously was Amelia's laughter. Amelia, who sneaked in secretly, had turned off our home's breaker, causing a major problem. The reason she did this? My name is Emma. At 29, I married Liam, my same-aged partner, and moved into my in-laws' house. My mother-in-law had already passed away, and my father-in-law, James, who has a respiratory illness, was living alone. Persuaded by my concerned husband, I started living there while continuing my job. In the in-laws' house, there was also the unmarried Amelia, but we never really got along. James is calm and kind, much like my husband. In contrast, his sister Amelia is temperamental and volatile. Being straightforward, I often clashed with her, and being a few years older, I was somehow managing to keep her in check. Excluding her, it was a peaceful life. But within half a year, James's illness worsened. He needed an oxygen machine even to stay at home. Both Amelia and I were working, so there was no one to help James during the day. We should have arranged for him to live in a care facility, but James refused to leave the house filled with memories of his wife. Consulting with my husband, we concluded it would be cruel to force James to move. So, we hired a caregiver, but that led to more problems. Already not getting along with me, Amelia disliked strangers entering her home and started harassing the caregiver. Invisibly to us, she was abusive and sarcastic, obstructing the work, and repeatedly complained to the agency, saying they couldn't be trusted with her father. By the time we realized the cause, multiple caregivers had quit. And the agency told us they couldn't send anyone new. What do we do now? Other agencies have refused us too. We must be blacklisted, damn it, all because of Amelia. Known as a troublesome household, we could no longer hope for a caregiver. We had to think of a solution with a sigh. Amelia, always self-centered, had isolated herself from the family. My husband, as her brother, tried to correct her, but it only led to fierce arguments, and he eventually told her to move out and live independently. But Amelia, angered by such reprimands, started complaining to me, as I was less intimidating than her brother. You're a daughter-in-law now, so you should take care of him, Emma. Liam can't quit his job, being a man, but you're different. Overheard by my husband, this sparked another argument. This situation didn't allow James to rest and recover peacefully. I didn't want to give in to Amelia's demands, but I couldn't just stand by either. Feeling indebted to James, who had tried to make me feel at home despite his illness, I decided, I'll quit my job and take care of James. I'll start learning about caregiving bit by bit. After all, James is family to me too. When I finally decided to resign for caregiving, James and my husband thanked me with tears. It was a real challenge learning about caregiving from scratch, but James always kindly encouraged me, despite my struggles. The only thing that didn't change was Amelia. She neither moved out nor helped. with the housework or caregiving. On her days off, she would disappear, presumably to hang out. Even though I had more time, I was busy with James and studying for caregiving. My husband and I shared household chores, but whenever something was missed, Amelia was quick to complain. "Oh, Emma decided to take on both caregiving and housework, right? You like doing everything yourself, don't you?" If I even slightly talked back, she would retaliate unpleasantly. She kept harassing me like this, but was always found out and scolded by my husband and others. Every time, she would play the victim, saying, "James is too kind to say anything, so I'm doing it for him." Naturally, things didn't improve, and her constant interference slowed down my household tasks, quickly piling up stress. I'm truly grateful to the caregivers who managed to smile and care for James despite her meddling. Not just me, but James and the others were fed up with Amelia's persistent attitude. However, one day, while my husband and I were secretly discussing how to encourage her independence, she announced, "I got engaged and I'm moving out. Goodbye, Dad. I'll come back to visit sometimes." With that, Amelia left the house obediently. We were surprised, but with her stormy presence gone, the house's atmosphere stabilized. James was aging and his condition was a concern, so there were talks of moving him to a care facility, but as I got accustomed to caregiving, we decided to continue with home care. Amelia, now living at her fiancé's place, often returned home. "I bet there'll be leftovers from dinner tonight. Put them in a Tupperware, I'll take them with me." Apparently, she was relying on our leftovers to avoid cooking for her fiancé. Her selfishness remained, treating me like a housemaid as before. "Amelia, don't order Emma around without helping yourself." Yeah, sorry Emma. That's enough, right? Hurry up with the dinner." Even when scolded by James, she would dismiss it with an indifferent attitude. Honestly, the amount of food I had to prepare didn't change much from before she left, so that wasn't really an issue. Rather, the problem was the food and utility costs. Although Amelia had moved out and stopped contributing financially, her frequent returns and unrestrained behavior strained our budget. Moreover, she had no sense of saving electricity or money. "Amelia, turn off the lights in unused rooms. Can I go ahead if you're not using the shower?" Amelia, lying on the couch with her back to the still-on TV, seemed to be playing games on her mobile phone. She had left the lights on in the bathroom and changing room, indicating she'd take a shower, but showed no signs of moving. The unnecessary electricity use and her lingering were holding everyone back. When I asked her to decide between gaming or showering, Amelia glared at me angrily. "Don't tell me what to do. I was just about to go. You always nag about saving and cutting costs, but it hardly makes a difference." "You're so petty, Auntie." "What did you just call me?" "I called you Emma. Don't pretend you heard wrong and get mad," she retorted, even as James scolded her. While saying this, Amelia finally turned off the TV and headed to the changing room. She always complained, but at least she listened to what was said. However, having worked for years and having a fiancé, her mindset remained that of a rebellious child. I had stopped expecting her to act her age. Though I didn't mind it, our relationship with Amelia didn't improve even after she left home, remaining tense. I had hoped that saving money could be a common ground for our family, but that too seemed unlikely. One day, I was driving to a large shopping mall in the suburbs, away from home. I was running an errand for James. James wasn't unable to go out, but he needed to carry a portable oxygen tank when he did. For the elderly James, carrying the heavy tank, even with a carrier, was burdensome, and the visible tubes made it obvious he was on oxygen therapy. Tired of being pitted by acquaintances saying, "Poor thing," each time they saw him, James preferred staying home. There were often errands, but my husband usually handled them when he was home. Being careful not to leave James alone, this time I had no choice but to leave him for the errand. I was worried, but James wasn't helpless. He only needed the tank for breathing. He was still capable of doing quite a bit by himself. While it's important to be mindful of saving electricity, I asked him to use the air conditioning as needed, and I set off for shopping. I completed the shopping without issues and returned home with the groceries a few hours later. I had left in the late morning, but now it was evening. Before entering the house, I picked up my mobile phone. There might be a message from my husband about dinner. However, what I saw on the screen shocked me. Huh? There were numerous missed calls. From my husband, James, and the general hospital where James goes. A cold sweat broke out on my back. While driving, I had switched my phone to a mode that wouldn't ring. And in my rush to get home early today, I forgot to switch it back, unaware of the incoming calls. A sense of foreboding crossed my mind. First, I tried calling back my husband, but the phone just kept ringing without connecting. Growing more anxious, I then tried James's number, but there was no answer. As a last hope, I called the hospital. A receptionist answered, and trying to stay composed, I asked about James. James is currently hospitalized. I can't provide more details over the phone. Could you please come to the hospital? After being transferred to several departments, I was informed of this and froze. I quickly replied, "I'm on my way," and hurriedly turned the car key, restarting the engine. The car was filled with urgency. As if reflecting my anxiety, the roads were congested. James had been fine when I left, waving goodbye as usual. I regretted leaving him alone, wondering how he could have been hospitalized so suddenly. Arriving at the hospital, I headed to the directed room. Walking down the tense corridor, I quietly opened the door, and there sat my husband, who had been unreachable. We looked at each other in surprise. But he explained that he was at the hospital waiting for James's tests. Which is why he couldn't answer the phone. I couldn't answer the phone either, I'm sorry. That's okay. So, how is James doing? He prompted me to look at James, who was sleeping in the bed. His complexion seemed a bit off, but his breathing, which I had been worried about, appeared calm. He's okay. There's no problem with his condition. He's just here for some tests. Actually, hearing from my husband that James was not in danger, I finally relaxed. But why was James hospitalized? Just as I was about to ask that question, the door to the room burst open. It was Amelia, rushing in, her eyes filled with fear. She ignored us and ran straight to James's bed. Seeing him lying there, she let out a loud scream. "What happened? Dad!" Her voice was so loud that my husband hurried to calm her down. But her frantic voice echoed through the room. "Please calm down!" My husband tried to pull her away from the bed. Her frightened voice eventually quietened down, but then she suddenly glared at me and started yelling with intense emotion. "What were you doing while you were with him?" I was overwhelmed by her anger and lost for words. My husband intervened to calm her, but her anger was still directed at me. Confused, I was caught in a strange sensation. James needed oxygen, but such a sudden hospitalization seemed unlikely. "Wait, can we talk calmly?" My husband turned to us with a calm voice, explaining what he knew. James was transported here because the power to his oxygen device had turned off. After I left, James had been sleeping in his room, but during that time, the power went off. Awoken by breathlessness and trying to turn the device back on, it wouldn't work, and he couldn't reach me or my husband. James connected a portable tank and managed to calm down, but he was anxious about waiting for us to return. Feeling a headache, James decided to go to the hospital, but we usually drive him, so he had no way to get there. He tried to call a taxi, but his hands were trembling, making it difficult to dial. So, James went to ask the neighbors to call a taxi for him. The neighbor who came out to the entrance screamed upon seeing James. He was taken to the living room, laid down, and cooled with ice packs while waiting for the ambulance. That's when James realized he had gotten heat stroke. After that, thanks to the appropriate treatment at the hospital, James's condition stabilized and he was safe. My husband heard from the doctor that James might not have noticed the heat due to his age, and he thought the trembling hands and headache were just symptoms of aging. Because James had convulsions, he was immediately treated and hospitalized for testing, leading to the current situation. After hearing this explanation from my husband, I asked him a daring question. It's unlikely that the power source for the device wouldn't work. Didn't we install it in a place where the plug couldn't be accidentally pulled out? My husband furrowed his brow and seemed deep in thought. Amelia remained silent during this time, but her face was visibly pale. That's right. It's impossible for it to come unplugged on its own. I went back home to check, and the plug wasn't out. Then how? I was even more confused by my husband's words. He had returned home to prepare for the hospital stay, and found that although the power was off, the plug was still connected. He then looked sternly at Amelia. It was clear she was hiding something, but I couldn't understand why he was so angry. Suddenly, my husband shouted at Amelia. You cut off the breaker, didn't you? Say something. Amelia jolted, beginning to tremble. She tried to say something, but only inaudible sounds came out. Then, my husband pulled something out of his pocket. The hospital had tried to contact me, my husband, and Amelia several times, but my husband was the first to get through. When he returned home for the preparations, he immediately sensed something odd. As soon as he opened the door, a wave of incredible heat hit him. The lights in the entrance hall didn't work. Realizing this, he checked around the house and found all electrical appliances were off. He rushed to check the breaker, and as expected, the switch was turned off. Surprised and suspicious, he wondered why this happened. There was no event like a lightning strike to cause the breaker to trip, and no other houses seemed to be affected by a power outage. However, he then remembered something. Our house had several security cameras installed. Before we got married, a burglar had broken into the house, and James had installed them for my mother-in-law's peace of mind. Even though we were saving money, these were kept for everyone's safety, and we weren't allowed to remove them. Footage up until the power outage should still be there, my husband thought, so he quickly restored the power and checked the recordings. I have the footage here. I transferred it to show both of you. In the hospital room, my husband took out his mobile phone. He showed us the transferred footage. The first thing shown was the familiar view of our house's entrance. A few minutes after I left, Amelia appeared. I was surprised to learn she had come to the house and involuntarily glanced at her. She entered the house using her key. Unlike her usual noise, she looked around suspiciously, almost as if she was checking if I was away. My husband then switched to the footage from a camera inside the entrance. The breaker in our house is located near the ceiling above the shoe rack. Amelia climbed onto a chair meant for wearing shoes and opened the breaker's cover. What are you doing? Even though I knew what was coming, I couldn't suppress my scream. The camera had sound recognition, so along with the movement noises, her dreadful whispering was recorded. This is the breaker, right? If the fridge stops, Emma will calm down a bit. Her malicious laughter echoed in the silent hospital room. I'll save electricity for you, your favorite. After that, the footage ended due to her turning off the breaker. We were all speechless and motionless. If the breaker was off, of course, the whole house's power supply would stop. The contents of the fridge must have spoiled in the hours before my husband noticed. Her frantic behavior when she rushed into the hospital room suggested she hadn't realized her actions could endanger James's life, a very malicious way to punish me. However, her reaction was unbelievable. "It's because you're always nagging about saving electricity." Without any signs of remorse, and with tears in her eyes, Amelia started justifying herself. "I didn't know James was home. I thought he had gone out with you. It's your fault for leaving him behind." She kept repeating I had no idea this would happen. Contrasting her tearful self-defense, I was filled with anger. "Breaking in like a thief and turning off the breaker, it's a miracle he survived. What if something had happened to Dad?" I couldn't help but blame Amelia, but she shouted back at me in defense. "But it's your fault. It's because of you that James is in this situation." Her accusations pierced my heart. Indeed, I shouldn't have left James alone. Was it my mistake to leave him, thinking going far would be a burden? The tension in the hospital room was palpable, then suddenly broken. "Be quiet." James, who was supposed to be sleeping, scolded her sternly. He couldn't raise his voice much due to his illness. Being inherently calm, his outburst surprised us all. All three of us turned to him in unison. "Do you realize what you have done? You've caused trouble for everyone and nearly killed me. Emma is not to blame." James's eyes were filled with anger and disappointment. His tone was stern, unlike his usual gentle demeanor. Awakened by Amelia's screaming and commotion, he had heard everything, including the surveillance camera discussion. "If you're going to continue making noise, leave. And don't come back to the house ever again." Scolded harshly, Amelia turned pale and froze, but soon began to cry loudly, which was very disturbing. She apologized to James, but he insisted she leave, and my husband escorted her out of the room. James was discharged just a few days later. When we went to the hospital to pick him up, he greeted us with a smile, seemingly recovered. However, upon returning home, Amelia was waiting at the front door. She hadn't shown up in front of us since that incident. We were expecting an apology, but her words were the same as before. "It's your fault. It's all because of you that James ended up like this." James and my husband were exasperated. Unwilling to admit fault and still blaming me, James stepped forward. "Be thankful I'm not reporting you to the police because you're family. Your actions are absolutely unforgivable." His cold voice in the hospital room hadn't changed, and she fell silent. But James didn't stop there. He seemed to despise her from the bottom of his heart. "It's disownment. I can't believe you still don't realize the severity of what you've done. Don't come to our house again. I went to the hospital, but I won't attend your wedding either." He spoke harshly, pushed Amelia aside, and entered the house vigorously. She was probably not expecting to be disowned by her own father, and stood there in shock. We decided to stand by James and support him. So, we entered the house, leaving her behind. Amelia repeatedly tried to apologize afterwards, but James ignored all her attempts. Having been troubled by her too much, we had no sympathy and upheld his decision. James had been asked to financially support Amelia's wedding and honeymoon, but he refused all requests and declared he wouldn't attend the wedding. One day, Amelia ambushed me outside the house. She desperately apologized and begged me to persuade James, but I had already decided not to forgive her. Knowing she would persist if ignored, I quietly listened to her before leaving her there and walking away. This series of events eventually became known to Amelia's fiancé. James had refused to attend the wedding for safety reasons, which puzzled her fiancé, prompting him to contact James. Unaware of the full story, her fiancé was shocked to hear about the emergency caused by Amelia and hurriedly apologized to James. The fiancé, unlike Amelia, seemed to have reasonable judgment. Calling her actions attempted murder, the wedding was eventually called off. They hadn't moved into their new home yet. But the fiancé canceled it and kicked Amelia out. Having already quit her job and spent her savings on beauty treatments in preparation for the wedding, she was left nearly broke. With the wedding cancellation costs to bear. She fell into debt but didn't show up at our doorstep. Meanwhile, the three of us were living peacefully. Without Amelia's disruptive presence, James's health seemed to be improving. Though we couldn't be complacent due to his age, a care facility seemed unnecessary for now. We were even planning a trip. You're the low-educated, incompetent employee which Mom told me about, huh? Suddenly, I was tasked with conducting an interview. My interviewee was Catherine, a daughter of a director who was scheming nepotism. However, she started laughing loudly, crossed her legs, and began to look down on me, bringing the interview to the verge of collapse. I couldn't believe the company was considering hiring someone like her. Later, when the director heard my report, he began to tremble. I'm 32 years old. After graduating from college and switching jobs once, I'm now working steadily at my current company. I usually work in the HR, and my boss, Jacqueline, the director, is someone I deeply respect. Because she is always cheerful and highly trusted by everyone around her. Though I respected the director, I often felt something was off. But I couldn't figure out what it was and continued to work with her for 5 years. Finally, I grasped what that feeling was about. It became clear when the director suddenly had to step away, and I was asked to interview her daughter as a stand-in. This led to an unbelievable fate for both the director and her daughter. Sorry to ask, but could you interview my daughter? Don't feel pressured just because she's my daughter, just treat her like usual. Understood. Leave it to me. She must be excellent, being your daughter. Thanks. I have to go now. Good luck. One day, I was suddenly asked to conduct an interview. The director had an unfortunate schedule change with a client and had to rush to a meeting room with the chief. But today was also the day her daughter was coming for an interview, so she asked me and my colleague Nancy to take over. Since we had no particular plans, so we happily agreed and saw the director off. Since the interview wasn't until the afternoon, we continued our usual work until then. I thought it would just be a formal interview, considering she was the director's daughter. After joining the company, the director's daughter was going to work as my colleague. Apparently, someone in our department was transferring next year, and the director recommended her daughter to fill the vacancy. While I was looking forward to it and working, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around to find Isabel, the chairman's daughter, standing there. Isabel is quiet but a vital member who always works earnestly. I only found out Isabel was the chairman's daughter recently, during the first drinking party in a long time where the director shared the story. Isabel wasn't at that gathering, but later, when I checked in with her, it turned out to be true. It's a fact known to those in positions above the director, but not to the general employees. Isabel kept it hidden because she didn't want everyone to know. After hearing this, I apologized. Isabel smiled, forgave me, and after some small talk, we became a bit closer. About this document. Do you have questions? I'll help if I can. Thank you. Isabel smiled gently. The reason why I could see such a smile because we had talked and gotten a little closer. Until then, Isabel had been someone who worked methodically, seldom interacting with other employees. Since she didn't exhibit any notable problem behaviors, no one in the department really said much. Now that I had talked to her and become a bit friendlier, I started approaching her, but until then, since there was no interaction outside of work, I hadn't paid her much attention. I'm sure most others felt the same way. Besides, Isabel herself probably liked being alone. At that time, that was all I understood about her. But later, I came to know that Isabel was dealing with some troubles. When I heard about them, I was shocked and couldn't believe it. "Hi, I'm Catherine. Thank you for having me today." The afternoon passed, and it was time for the interview. As the interviewer, I was waiting in the interview room with my colleague for the director's daughter. She arrived on time, as scheduled. Her educational background was impeccable, with active participation in volunteer work and cultural exchanges. She had also studied abroad, and her resume mentioned proficiency in German. "Please, take a seat." I said that, guiding Catherine to the chair in front of me. Catherine had frozen for a bit after entering, then looked uneasy, as if she wanted to ask something. She seemed confused not to see her mother among the interviewers. I explained that the director had urgent business and that my colleague and I had taken over the interview. "The director isn't here, but please relax and answer the questions. They aren't too difficult." When I said this, Catherine furrowed her brows and looked at me. She sat down, her face tensing with nervousness. I kept my tone calm and asked the questions formally. However, the interview didn't go as I expected. Catherine gave careless responses and didn't answer even simple questions. I didn't show it, but I was very surprised inside. I had checked her resume and imagined her to be a competent person, so the contrast was startling. "Are you nervous?" Concerned, I asked this, to which Catherine looked at me with her eyes narrowed. I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you really standing in for my mother? Wouldn't the person next to you be more competent?" "Excuse me?" I was taken aback by her unexpected words. As I wondered about her intention, Catherine slouched back, sneering. "Like, is this interview even necessary? My mom is a director, you know? I wasn't told I'd have to spend so much time on this. I have plans later." Her attitude left me speechless. What was she talking about? Seeing me silent, Catherine burst out laughing. "Didn't you know? It's as if I'm already hired. Unlike you, I'm competent. Please watch your language. We are in the middle of an interview. I don't care what you think, but please answer our questions properly." When I retorted irritably, Catherine closed her mouth in displeasure. I had high hopes knowing she was the director's daughter, but now I couldn't deny feeling disappointed. However, since she said she is joining the company, I tried to persuade her. But it seemed nothing got through to Catherine. She absent-mindedly fiddled with her nails, not even trying to make eye contact. "It's kind of funny how desperate you are. I do want a job, but I'm not exactly enthusiastic. I just need enough money to live. Even so, working comes with responsibilities, right? You understand that, having come for the interview? I heard this company has a good work-life balance. It is impossible for someone as incompetent as you to convince me. Do you get it?" Catherine's flippant attitude during the interview left me with an indescribable feeling. Indeed, many people in the company have a similar stance as her. But even they think proactively and act responsibly. I just wanted her to understand that, but Catherine dismissed it as something only enthusiastic employees do, arguing that it makes no difference in terms of evaluation, so it's pointless. I didn't want to work with someone like her. My colleague, perhaps feeling the same, shook their head in displeasure. "If you understand, can you hurry up and end the interview? I know about you, you know." Catherine said this with a sly smile. I didn't understand what she meant, but for some reason, Catherine looked triumphant. "Mom said we don't need people like you in this company." Catherine said this, crossing her arms and puffing out her chest. Hearing her words, I couldn't help but tense up and look at her. Catherine seemed self-assured, sneering at me with a side glance. Then she began to act arrogantly. "I could interview you if you want." "I don't understand what you're saying." Frustrated, I responded, and Catherine provoked me, saying if I'm not incompetent, I should be able to answer her questions. "Are you refusing because you can't answer?" Even when I disagreed, Catherine wouldn't listen. Since she persistently said I should be able to answer otherwise, I finally asked what she wanted to know. With a malicious smile, Catherine started prying into my educational background. What I did as a student, and whether I've made any achievements in the current company. When I answered honestly, she laughed it off and became even more arrogant. Eventually, she crossed her legs and laughed loudly, claiming that I would soon be her subordinate. When I asked what she meant, Catherine turned to me as if she were glad that I asked that question. I am planning to take over Mom's position. I'm the director's daughter, and she said she'd bring me in. So it's like I'm being hired for her succession, right? Huh? Even if you join the company, you can't just become a director so easily. You have to learn the job first, right? That'll be easy. Mom acknowledges my ability. I'm sure I can learn the job in a year, right? Then, I will become a manager in the second year, and a director in the third year. I'm talented, so maybe I won't even need a full year to learn the job. I was increasingly astounded. It was a natural reaction, considering she was missing the steps to become a manager. My colleague, too, looked dismayed and was no longer interested in conducting a proper interview. We should better be wrapping up this troublesome interview quickly. Then, we should report this to the director, suggesting she reconsider hiring her daughter. I understood your career plan. However, I won't be your subordinate. Please revisit our company's website and check the career plans of your seniors. You'll realize your plan is unrealistic. I said that, trying to end the interview. I never imagined I'd have to lecture someone like this during an interview. Suppressing a sigh, I sent Catherine a silent look, signaling her to leave. But Catherine, seemingly unsatisfied. Why? She asked. There's nothing more to answer. After I said that, Catherine stood up abruptly. The chair she had been sitting in toppled backward with a clatter. Ignoring that, Catherine approached me and leaned on the desk in front of me. Why? Isn't it natural I'll be your boss? I ask you, why would I become your subordinate? Because you're the low-educated, incompetent employee Mom told me about. I was stunned by her words. Catherine, looking down on me, talked about what her mother had said. I was astounded to hear the content of her story. After venting everything, Catherine left the interview room, seemingly satisfied. Left behind, I exchanged glances with my subordinate next to me, mentioning the need to verify the truth of her story with the director. We need to discuss this in our interview report this evening. In the evening, I approached the director, who had returned to our department looking a bit tired from a long meeting. The director, though tired, urged me to continue. I revealed the outrageous behavior of the director's daughter at the interview. The director, wide-eyed and deeply shocked, listened to my words. My child behaved like that. I know it's hard to believe, but it's the truth. Also, there was something else she mentioned that concerned me. What is it? With a tense face, I told the director everything Catherine had said. The director became even more confused, turning red with anger, and raised her voice. Hearing her, people around the floor started staring at us. Yet, I calmly affirmed the facts. Jacqueline, did you tell your daughter I'm a low-educated, incompetent employee? If that's true, I'll have to respond accordingly. Are you threatening me? No, not at all. I just have personal concerns and wanted to verify the facts. Hearing this, the director looked confused. I don't know what my daughter said, but do as you like. The director, seemingly unable to contain her anger, made a dismissing gesture with her hand. My perception of the director changed significantly that day. Later, the director called me in. I also had things to discuss after completing my fact-checking, so I responded to her call. The meeting was in a conference room. I opened the door and greeted as I entered. Inside, the director was waiting for me, pale and trembling. You've done something unnecessary, haven't you? What do you mean? Don't play dumb. The director approached me as I entered the room, glaring at me fiercely. Despite her menacing look, I started recording on my mobile phone in my pocket. The director was still pale, showing signs of distress. Yesterday, you talked about fact-checking, but what exactly did you verify and with whom? Because of you, I was called in by the vice presidents this morning, and So, were you told to consider a department transfer and resign from your position? So, it was you. Confess what you did. Confronted with her accusations, I honestly explained my actions from the previous day. First, I had a direct conversation with the director. I thought I was the incompetent, low-educated employee her daughter mentioned at the interview, but as we talked, unfamiliar facts emerged. The employee who the director's daughter often heard about was someone the director always burdened with work, leading to almost daily overtime. I was shocked as I had no memory of such treatment, initially thinking the director's daughter was lying. However, seeing my colleague's stiffened face after hearing the story confirmed its veracity. Actually, there's one person in the department who has a lot of overtime. Really? Who is it? Yes. I manage the overtime records on a computer, and I always thought something was odd. I was unaware my colleague was doing this and was just impressed. My own overtime was within the regulations, so I wasn't the person mentioned in the story. But the revelation of who was doing the excessive overtime was a shock. It's Isabel. I was stunned. There was no indication of this, but I decided to confirm it with Isabel herself, accompanied by my colleague. Hearing our questions, Isabel initially tried to evade but eventually broke down, crying about the work dumped on her by the director and the difficulties she faced when left out of communication. I realized I didn't notice, or perhaps didn't want to notice. I should have been aware sooner. Isabel had been struggling alone all this time. Her lack of interaction was to avoid conflict with the director, who often caused trouble when she spoke with others. Angered by these underhanded tactics, I confronted the director directly, but she denied everything, which prompted me to take the next step. That night, I consulted with the CEO and chairman. Although I was only a manager, I was actually favored by the CEO and chairman, having been headhunted to this company. I was quite close to them, often invited to dinner meetings. I had a dinner appointment with the CEO and chairman, where I objectively discussed Isabel and the director's actions, expressing my concerns. The CEOs listened calmly and promised to investigate. But I couldn't wait. When I expressed concern to the chairman about his granddaughter, he questioned how I knew about Isabel, but admitted their relationship after I explained our recent closeness. The CEO, though not related to Isabel by blood, was the one who had invited her to the company. Taking responsibility, the CEO deeply reflected and offered some advice. Which brought me here today. Jacqueline, did you really do such things to Isabel? When I asked this, the director, initially flustered, finally admitted her actions as I persisted. At first, I didn't. But then, thinking she might be the next CEO as a chairman's granddaughter, I panicked. Were you aiming for the CEO position, Jacqueline? Yes, is that so wrong? I've devoted myself to this company for that. I thought I finally became a director and next would be the CEO. I can't let her get in my way. Hearing the director's ambition, I was taken aback. But it seemed she had greatly erred in her methods. Furthermore, if she had truly achieved significant accomplishments, the CEO would have recognized her. The director seemed defiant. As she started to slander Isabel, I interrupted her unbearable words to continue. I understand your point, Jacqueline. You understand. So, this time. But you're wrong. You pushed Isabel too hard. Please take responsibility for that. As I firmly said this, the conference room door opened. There stood Isabel, flanked by the CEO and chairman. The director gasped at the sight. Are you trying to deceive me? No, I brought Isabel here because I wanted you to apologize to her. As I said this, the director clenched her back teeth in frustration and glared at me. If that's your intention, then I won't hold back anymore. Be prepared. The director, glaring, positioned herself in front of Isabel. She then turned her fierce gaze on Isabel and appealed to the CEO and chairman standing beside her. Please listen to me. You are being deceived. These two conspired to overthrow me. The director, with clenched fists and a stern face, made her accusation strongly. The CEO and chairman, displeased by the director's words, watched as she fabricated a story about how we pinned our mistakes on her. I didn't do such a thing. This all started when I investigated what your daughter said during the interview. You admitted it, didn't you? Please take the responsibility. No. I only admitted because I was forced into a corner. Where's the proof my daughter said those things? We have the interview recorded. I'll ask Nancy to bring it right now. Please wait a moment. I immediately called my colleague, who quickly brought the interview recording to the conference room. We projected the interview footage, the report, and Isabel's overtime data with the room's projector, showing them to the CEO and chairman. Still, the director didn't give up. She accused me of threatening her daughter during the interview to coerce damaging testimony, and claimed I manipulated Isabel's overtime data using my colleague. I was deceived. This woman has been carrying out a meticulous plan. I realized it too late. The director even began to fake cry poorly. Then she called Catherine, put it on speaker, and asked if I had threatened her during the interview. Catherine, maintaining her usual tone but becoming angry upon hearing my name, said the interview was terrible. My daughter says this. Do you still believe her? Are you saying I bullied and cornered Isabel? Just because she's your cute granddaughter, you're playing favorites? That's absurd. The chairman and others looked displeased at her words. I decided to present my final piece of evidence. I have an audio recording of you admitting what you did to Isabel. It's from our conversation before Isabel and the others arrived. Please give up and admit it. And apologize to Isabel. I played the audio of our earlier conversation from my mobile phone. Hearing her own words and realizing I had recorded the conversation, the director clenched her back teeth in frustration. This is a clear violation of compliance. The director had no further rebuttals. The CEO and chairman then informed her that a meeting would be held to discuss her future sanctions and advised her to prepare any counterarguments by then. Hearing this, the director slumped in her seat with a look of despair on her face. Subsequently, the director was stripped of her position. Her salary was reduced, and she was transferred to a small, regional department. It's unlikely she will ever return to a director's role, regardless of her future achievements. Naturally, Catherine's job offer was also revoked. Catherine, outraged that she was treated this way because of her mother, stormed into the company but was quickly restrained by security and taken away. According to a rumor, the director, who was already divorced, recently disowned her daughter and is now living alone in an apartment near her new department. I received thanks from Isabel. Furthermore, I was promoted from manager to director and am now working as the director of human resources. While I was genuinely happy about the promotion, I also regretted not realizing the situation sooner. Still, Isabel is strong. Since the director's departure, she seems to have regained her spirits over time. Seeing this brought me relief. I enjoy my work at this company. I hope that one day Isabel will come to feel the same way.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.